Antonine interview. I hope you enjoyed the first half. If you haven't seen it yet, I would recommend go checking it out. If you want to go help us out, you can go to therover.ca/support-us. Check it out. You can sign up for the free newsletter. You can sign up for the paid newsletter. You can throw money our way. Enjoy part 2 of this episode. Have a nice day.
My problem with the proponents of more immigration and stuff is that it's always presented like these people are farm equipment. Like, we need labor. Like, they're fucking people. Federal government, or even within Quebec, when we talk about immigration numbers, the people who defend higher immigration numbers always use, like, I find it, like, really cheapens the debate. Like, well, there's shitty jobs. We need someone to do them, and it's not going to be me,
it's
a white person.
terrible argument.
And like, that's to me the sous-entendu of that argument, and I don't like that either. I mean, I think the reality is we're living in a world that's seeing the biggest displacement of humans since World War II. And no matter what, we're going to see an increase in immigration and movement. And to stay competitive in a global capitalist economy, we need more bodies. And I mean, so many of the arguments these are not arguments about culture. These are arguments about capitalism. And like, we're not so much, and it's not like it used to be that, for the 1995 referendum, Canada's kind of playing dirty because Canada has like limitless resources compared to Quebec, and Canada can really put its thumb on the scales. But see, if it happened today, it's Canada and a free trade globalized economy of, like, the culture has been Netflixified. Everyone, like, you speak to kids today, and the amount of English in their day-to-day, and I'm talking Francophone kids, they use a lot of English. And I don't think this is the rest of Canada. I think this is the fact that you have a phone that's connected to everything, and unfortunately, English is the language of capitalism.
Yeah, you're totally right, because there used to be, like, you think about...
I'm astounded that we would agree on something.
The Quebec, me and you?
We're ambushing.
And I will agree with a number of things that you just said, because about, globalization. I would like the Anglos and the federal government to be concerned about the fact that not only Canada, but, the situation of Quebec brings that challenge for us to continue to speak French, in a big English ocean, and sometimes I feel like probably because we did too much politics with all of this, and we were really using it as a political wedge, language in general.
The others were using it as a wedge as well, though. Like, you're not the only one to use it as a wedge.
It's on both sides, but I would really like, the federal government, the Liberals, the Anglos, the rest of Canada to be interested in saving the language, because it makes our difference. I think you guys live in Montreal. You like it because it's Montreal.
Montreal is like this beautiful culture, partly because of Quebec.
Like, but like if French disappeared entirely from Montreal,
we would just be Toronto Part 2.
Exactly.
But I
don't want that.
So please help us saving French.
Exactly. Agreed.
Absolutely. And I think, like, look, I think we Anglophones in particular need to play a role in giving a shit and caring and contributing.
Amen.
And like, the way that we try to do it is we either translate some of our stuff into French, or we just pay people to produce French content, and then we translate it into English. But it both run. You run a French version and you run an English version, and we encourage our readers. And like, we've had blowback. We've had readers who've said, "I don't want unilingual Francophone stuff in my newsletter," and it's like, dude, it's a free fucking newsletter.
You released a few newsletters, especially in the past 6 months, that have been
that's Savannah, that's our managing editor being laser focused on this goal of ours, which is to show that we can also be part of the solution. Like, every month at least we produce French content. We're not a big budget media, but like, the Gazette doesn't do it, and I think they should, and they could, and CBC, like, there are too many people. Just as I would say there are too many supporters of independence who support it for the wrong reasons, there are way too many liberal supporters, and there are way too many Anglophones who kind of refuse to live in French. And I don't mean like what bothers me sometimes is this metric of like, speak it at home, or
no, that's not relevant.
Yeah,
right. That data about speaking at home, I don't care personally. When I see those surveys, numbers, those surveys, I don't care. But in the public space, when I go in restaurants, when I go to university, I want to hear French.
Yeah,
it's. I do think it's a problem. when I go into, you know what, not even me, when my friends who are Anglophones, I don't have very many Anglophone friends. Like, I have mostly Franco friends.
I don't
but
consider you a friend. I'm just kidding. I consider you like a sibling.
That's
sorry.
hurtful. But it's problematic when you can't even like ask for a croissant. Like,
of
like,
all
it's
food items to ask for.
like,
in French.
but I do think that like even just superficial French, like, you know, if you could just carry a conversation, like, that's important. That's very important.
I like your example with the croissant.
Yeah.
So cliche.
It is cliche, but like also I want a chocolatine, you know, like
I want
Yeah,
you
yeah.
to see you order beigne. Une douzaine de beignes.
je veux une douzaine de bang. Bang me up, motherfucker.
It's hard to say in English bang.
Bang. I sometimes this is not on topic. Sometimes I just like speaking in French with the Anglophone accent, like, est-ce que ça va avec toi?
Oh, you on
Je
purpose.
je suis
Oh
vraiment
yeah, the R. You
excellent
had
à
to
parler
soften
en-
your R. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
vraiment excellent à parler
Why?
Parce que c'est drôle. Mais
So,
I don't do that. I don't do
Isaac
that when I'm
has a-
ordering.
Isaac
For
has
the
a-
rest of the interview, I'm gonna speak English like that.
Yes, please.
Do you like it?
Don't,
I do a lot.
Isaac. We're gonna eat shit a lot. We don't need to eat more. Like, we don't need to go to like a shit buffet.
Sometimes when I speak in
I'll-
English, I do that accent.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, just for fun.
Yeah.
I wanna
I
hear
don't-
Sometimes
it.
when I speak
I don't
in,
like
in
it.
English, I speak with a Quebecois accent.
Wow, that's next level.
That's some trolling
accent
right there.
I
yeah.
love I love doing
Third
it.
degree.
It is. This is not a joke. It is my favorite accent in English.
So
I think it is. I think it's cool. I think it's kind of sexy.
Hey, man.
wow,
I do. Yeah.
it's very
don't think it's
unusual
ever-
for
yeah.
someone to think that Quebec accent is
It's an
sexy.
amazing
When we go to
accent.
France, it's a
Yeah, but
catastrophe.
the France. Have you heard the French speak?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I have.
oui, du coup, bref,
J'étais sur Paris et puis.
Yeah, I'm unsure what expression to use right now. I'll just say "zgu." That's it.
That's it. It's like I saw this hilarious. This doesn't matter.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyways, we use like 20 words. They use zuku. Like.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But okay. The thing I wanted to ask about was in regards to just separation in general. How do you deal with the often contradictory and huge challenge of creating a new nation? As people who let's talk about the fact that Quebec was colonized by the English, right? But also Quebec is a colonizer. We are both. So how do we deal with that? And if we were to separate, how do you deal with that contradiction? And how do you actually create a place that is safe for the Autochtones who live here, for the Métis, for everyone, for the immigrants who live here? How do you make a place that is both Quebecois as a nation, completely separate from Canada, and welcoming to those people?
Earlier, we were talking about contradictions, and it is a big one.
Yeah.
It is a big, big one, and it's really, really complex. I don't have a solution for that. I think it will be through negotiation, nation to nation. I believe that Quebec is, in French we say, I don't even know how we say it in French, but the territory.
Yeah.
It's, we cannot break it off. I don't know how to say it.
You can't partition the territory again
exactly.
and again.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm starting over again. Okay. I think the solution will be through negotiation, and I think that we cannot part the territory.
Yeah.
But I think there are some solutions that we can have where First Nations will be able to have autonomy in the, whole territory, untouched territory. If you, in the Bay James
Agreement. Yeah.
the agreement, there is regional government, a lot of autonomy. In the north, with Kativik government, they have their own government. I think that's the kind of solutions, innovative solutions that we can apply in an independent Quebec. But it will go through a negotiation, and it's not going to be easy.
But that is a hard part. Like with where we have this new debate about they want to create these museums, or a museum of like the museum that's going to represent the history of the Quebec nation. And when one of the experts was asked, like, well, what about indigenous
the First
people?
Nation, right?
And I think that it was probably a poor choice of words, but I believe he said like, well, we consider them to be prehistory. And it's
That's a
Oh,
bad.
it's
that
just
was a bad
clumsy.
response.
it's clumsy,
not
and I think
fair.
it's a generational thing too. I think you're
Yeah.
young enough to realize that like you can't hold that speech of like we didn't do anything wrong, we were allies, we never did a single wrong thing to the Indigenous folks. I mean, look, there's subtleties and there's ways that France carried out colonialism that is different
Very
than the way
different,
Spain
yeah.
and England did. But the fact remains that like if we were to look at the project of Quebec, Indigenous people lost out on that, just as they did in the project
Can I
of
actually
Canada.
ask for more context because I have none? What did they do differently? Because I know in like the residential schools and stuff in the rest of the country, and then it became here as well. How was it different? What do we do different?
I'm
'Cause-
not a historian, so
Okay.
I want to keep it really, really simple. But
Okay.
France, the approach was really different from Great Britain, like the English approach. A lot of alliances, trading. So it wasn't like France arrived and put everyone in reservations and killed everyone. That's really not how it happened. There are some exceptions, of course, and I'm
There was
really
slavery,
simplifying
there
right
was-
now.
yeah.
But the general approach was to make alliances and commerce. And most of Nouvelle France history is about that. There was a war with
Yeah.
the Iroquois, and they were kicking the Wendat's. Sorry for my
Yeah, that's fine.
bad words, but they were kicking the Wendat's in the Great Lakes region.
Yeah.
And we saved, like the government saved the Wendats, the Hurons, and they took them and they brought them in Quebec City, and they gave them a land, which is Wendake now. I'm simplifying the
sure,
story.
for sure.
Okay, I
Yeah.
please don't cancel me, but
No, save might be the wrong word because save implies a sort of like but
Yeah.
provided
Please
shelter,
read-
asylum.
read about that, okay?
yeah,
the
yeah.
Wendats history, the war with the Iroquois. They were refugees, actually. They were taken as refugees, and this is how Wendake. At the beginning, it was not on that part of land. It was on the Université Laval territory.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting, and I think it's really symptomatic of, the Nouvelle France approach and how they were really. They were allies, and I'm not saying that everything was perfect, not at all, but it's more when, we were under the English regime that things got
Well, the British
little
are empire
different.
builders, right? They colonize in a much more. It leaves a much larger footprint, right? The 13 colonies, the United States, whereas I think France and Spain, but more so France, it's about commerce. It's just getting raw materials back to
Yeah.
France, beaver pelts, wood, mining resources, cod, whatever. So like that's gonna create different relationships. But I still think fundamentally, even someone will say like, well, look at Samuel de Champlain. He had a dream of this multi-ethnic society. He did,
No.
but he also like his dream
I'm
was
not
like,
going
yeah.
to.
His dream was like,
idealize.
oh, we can all be. Yeah, you can all be subjects to the French crown. That's not the same. That's not like egalitarian. You want them to be your subjects. I think we're all descendant of Europeans, and the European reflex, whether it comes in the French flavor or the British flavor, is more or less white people in charge, and everybody else like business relationships, alliances, treaties, whatever. But it was always, I think, understood that at the end of the day, this is a French colony.
I agree, but I don't
It's not
like it.
exactly
I
the
don't
same.
like it when we compare ourselves to United States and how it.
We should not compare
No,
ourselves.
no.
to the States.
It's not the same. It was not the same approach. It's not the
Yeah.
same history. So
No.
sometimes we just import like American concepts.
Yes.
We shouldn't.
And we shouldn't.
Makes no sense.
Our fight over history is, I mean, it's always telling, right? It tells you how we think of the present and the future, right? The perspectives that we choose to engage with. And I'll always struggle with who gets to be called a Quebecer and who doesn't get to be, and who gets to call themselves a Quebecer and what that means, because you'd be surprised the amount of anglophones who like really desperately won't identify as Quebecers but don't feel. Some of the
Included?
exclusion might be self-imposed, And some of it might be like I've encountered, like when I was a kid, someone spat in my face because I was English. It was one of the craziest, weirdest things I ever experienced. And I mean, I'm not gonna cry about it today, but I remember thinking like, okay, I'm not excluding myself here though. Like this is definitely like I didn't choose for this to happen. This sucks. But and it fosters a kind of an anger in you that it took me a long time to unlearn. Like I was mad for a long fucking time, and then you work in construction and you start to realize like, oh, these motherfuckers are pretty cool. I like these guys. I like hanging out with these guys. I actually connect with a lot of these guys way more than I connect with these Anglos who I'm friends with by default, because like there's like 6 Anglos at our school and you got to be, it's like, all right, I guess I'm friends with weird Chuck. What's he putting in his nose? Ugh, I don't want to look, but he does speak English, so we are on the same team. Fuck. There were a lot of those in school. I remember where it's like, oh, what? We're on the same team as this guy. I don't like this guy at all. He's so boring. Yeah. Anyways,
but
first world problems.
About what is a Quebecer? Who are the Quebecers? I think if you want to be a Quebecer, you are a Quebecer. That's my opinion.
That was René Lévesque. That was what he said, right? Says est Québécois qui. What? How does the expression go?
Et Québécois qui veut l'être.
There you go.
Yeah, and I'm from an immigrant family.
Yeah.
And they chose to be Quebecers. They chose to speak French, and they chose to get involved in Quebec society. And I think that's enough,
Yeah, I think that should be enough.
Yeah.
How can we do a better job? So let's talk about the language a little bit. Like I believe the language is very important personally. Like that's why when I moved here, I spoke French. I did immersion.
Absolutely.
But I said,
and when I arrived here, you spoke French with me for a few minutes. Yeah.
I mean, my default is French, and like I speak in French 80% of the time. So like 80% of my life is in French. So it's one of those things where it's just like it's just not really much thought at this point. I'm just like, yeah, and I make mistakes, whatever. But like I'm still learning. But when
French is hard, by the way.
It is tough. Specifically, I'm like 90% there. It's the genre. I can't
like,
do it.
Du coup in France and genre.
Gender thing.
Oh,
like
okay.
A feminine or a masculine chair.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Oh no, yeah. The
No, actually,
objects have
like
gender. Okay.
Yeah. I say things like genre, en fait, si, like all that's part of my vocabulary now.
Okay.
But I literally just fail all the time to say the ils and elles. I'm just like.
That's so hard. I'm
It's
learning.
really
I'm learning German.
Oh, they have 3 genders. Yeah.
Oh God, it's so complicated.
Yeah.
So I feel your pain.
Yeah.
I know, and I have friends that would be able to put their kids in English schools. They have the choice. They can choose French or English schools, and I'm like, send them to French schools.
Do it. You're way better
They
off.
will learn English.
No matter what, they'll learn
Really
English.
quickly,
Yeah.
no problem. But
We
French
live in a
is so
sea of
hard.
English. You're
We
going to
do.
learn English. It's
So-
not hard.
No.
And it's because it's constantly being like, people pick up the vernacular and pick up. My mother is francophone 100%, but she speaks better English than most of the English speakers
That's
that I
it.
know. She
That's
has an accent, but she speaks a more, she just absorbs
She's very
it better.
eloquent in English.
It's
Yeah.
I think English
So-
is the probably it seems
It's-
impractical,
it's-
but because it's
not
this
too
language
hard,
that has French
and we are surrounded
Yeah,
by
yeah.
English. So I've learned English when I was a kid by reading the cereal boxes and the jam. It's.
Let me tell you something. I knew what riboflavin was, okay? I knew what it fucking was.
So what I was going to ask about was, so like not everyone has, when I moved here, I said, I'm only making friends with francophones. That's what I decided, because I was like, if I want to integrate and learn the language, I should speak the language.
So that's why you ignored me for 6 months.
I didn't ignore you for 6 months.
No, there are other reasons that he doesn't want to talk about right now.
Because
You
I
ignored
suck.
me and worked with my partner.
That's right. I did.
But not everyone has the wherewithal to just be like, I will be ineffective at communicating with my friends for the next 6 months until I figure out how to do. Not everyone has that. Like
It's
that's
embarrassing. And
it's
hard,
embarrassing, and it was
It makes you
embarrassing.
vulnerable. Yeah.
and like all the time. So how can we in Quebec do a better job because at allowing people to learn French? Because I'm not so confident that saying after 3 months you're not allowed to receive medical care in in English is the right solution. And so you might think that it is. So please explain to me what your thoughts are on that, and like how maybe we can do a better job.
I think
integrating
that
people.
3 months thing is a little
it was
exaggerated.
6 months or a year.
It's
It's-
3 months.
I think it's 6 months. I'm not quite sure, but
We can
let's
fact check.
check. Yeah. And you know, the rule is that you will receive communications in French. It's not that hard. Like you will receive letters and emails and.
But if you talk to your doctor, what's happening behind closed doors?
Actually, the doctors, they have the freedom to do whatever they want. So it's not a problem. No one will die because they go to see a doctor and the doctor is like, no, I'm not gonna speak English today.
And it's
not gonna
stuff.
happen.
It's harder, right? Like it's so personal and like it's.
But I was reading and watching English TV and it was like we were about to let English speakers die in the emergency room. It's not gonna happen. But you know,
or no, you know what? If they die in the emergency room, it's because their healthcare system sucks.
Probably
it's not because of language.
It's not because of language, you know, because there are no doctors actually.
Yeah, sorry.
So not about language at all. So learning French is really really hard, and we get that. And by the way, Quebecers, they appreciate
any effort. Yeah.
Like any effort, even if you have a strong accent, nobody cares about that. And we kind of live the same thing with English. I've worked in the private sector for 2 years in a big company, and a lot of the staff was speaking English.
Yeah,
a lot of
Francophone
colleagues.
staff speaking English, or
yes, I was
they do
getting
that to
there.
themselves, right? Yeah.
I had Canadian colleagues, people in California, in the UK. They were speaking English, obviously, but a lot of people in Montreal office speaking English.
Yeah.
And at the moment you have one person speaking English in the room, we all switch in English.
I've become a lot more aware of that in my old age, where it's like, oh shit, are they all speaking English because I'm here? Let's not do that.
Because
please.
we are aware of the fact that French is hard.
Yeah.
That Anglophones, they don't learn French as their second language everywhere. Like Spanish is probably
although
more
it's getting
popular.
better here. It's getting better here.
Yeah, probably, but you know, we are aware of the fact that it's very very hard to learn French. But I live the same reality. Like right now, guys, we are speaking about really complicated, complex issues and topics, and I'm speaking English and I would sound a lot more smarter.
I don't think so.
If I
Listen,
think
I can't
so.
find the
Of
info.
course.
I think the point gets across extremely well. I think your English, you undersold how good your English
like
is.
50% of what I
undersell it.
think is coming out of my mouth in English right now. But you know, I know it's hard. But I think it goes both ways. If we feel an interest of learning French and living in French, like I really appreciate you. Actually, I really appreciate the way you're seeing things. And you said that you wanted to speak French, you wanted to have francophone friends. But I don't feel that very often because we talked about the PQ, but I also worked in a CAC minister's office, and it was immigration minister's office. So I was involved in those policies in immigration, and I can say now that it was a big debate, internal debate about the 6 months. You know, the ministry, the public servants, they were like, ew, it's hard for people to be 100%, you know, learning French in 6 months is kind of impossible. But
in addition to it's your, you know, like if you've come from another country, there's all kinds of other shit you have to learn, right?
You have to learn. You have to find daycare spots for your kids. You have to find an apartment. You have to find a job. The reality, the immigrants' reality is so, you know, it's sometimes really, really hard. But learning French should be a priority because I think it's really related to how well you will get integrated in the society, in the Quebec society. It will be easier for you to work, and so it's important. I think we need to push people to learn French because, you know, naturally when you're living in Montreal, it's 100% possible to live 100% in English.
Yeah.
A lot of people.
So yeah, I think the government has to push a little, but we need to, you know, keep in mind that they are humans with, you know.
I have a question. I have a question. Get out of my face. You specifically. Are there free classes for people when they move here?
Yes.
Down the road, that's a francisation, like that church
Yeah.
down there. That's all they do.
The Koreans? The
Yeah,
Korean
I don't think it's even a Korean church anymore. I think it's just francisation all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And when people, this is terrible. I'm going to tell you the truth, and it's going to hurt to say it. But when I pass by, and they're all taking a smoke break, they're from all over the world. They're speaking to each other in English. I'm
No.
like, fuck. No, guys, please. You're
Oh.
making no. But I get it because it's just, again, it's a globalization thing, and I'm not blaming them for doing like the thing that's easy. That's humanity is a history of a species that almost always does the easy thing
Well, that's
versus
what
the right thing.
But that's constantly. Our pursuit is always to find how we
Comfort.
can live easier
Yeah.
and in more comfort. Like
Of
that's
course.
human nature is to do
Yeah.
that.
And learning French is
it's
hard.
Tough. It's tough.
But you choose Quebec.
Yeah.
I mean,
You have to
I
do
have
it.
the same problems, by the way. Like, I'm criticizing my Anglophone friends, but I actually have the same problems with my French friends who only stay in their French community. They
Oh,
don't make
yeah.
friends with Quebecers. They come to UDM because it's always
Oh, the
UDM.
French from
From France.
France.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh
French.
my
I'm
God!
talking
Yes,
about the French.
absolutely.
I'm talking about the French. I'm not
Yeah.
talking about the Quebecers.
Something we can all agree on now.
No, I love the French. My partner is
At
French.
last.
Yeah.
So like, but she's integrated with Quebec. So like, she's been here 9 years and she's very Quebecois, really,
Mhm.
Quebecoise. And but I have the same problem with the French, or like whoever, but who speak the language for sure, obviously. But then they don't speak to any Quebecers.
Yeah, because Quebec's culture is not only the language.
Exactly.
it's more
And
than
I'm
that.
like, well, is it, even if you know the language, there's still a step beyond staying in your community. Like
Mm.
it's because Quebec is multiculturalism. Quebec is diversity.
I
I think that's fundamental.
Quebec is interculturalism.
Yes, please.
That's-
No,
that's-
that's too too complicated to
yeah, that is a
explain
big
in
one.
English
That's a
for
big
me.
can
But
of words. No,
please
but
Google
it's a
multiculturalism.
multiculturalism is sort of like a pie, right, where everyone's a slice, and
Yeah.
and interculturalism is sort of you have a dominant culture
I
that
don't
everyone
like the
agrees
word
on.
dominant.
Maybe not dominant, but you have
Common.
a central common culture.
Yeah.
That I think both are essentially like unworkable in the sense that people have their identity, and it's a very hard thing to divorce yourself from, and it's a very hard thing to get someone to abandon or like give up on what they had in the old country. I think it's
But
but it's
once
the most
again,
human thing, right?
once
Like,
again, my grandparents, they were the living proof of interculturalism,
yeah,
in my opinion, because they never gave up on their culture, but they added the Quebec's culture.
I think,
It's possible.
and you were agreeing with us on this before, so I'm going to hold you to it. But I think it's when we start to get really fixated on what people are speaking at home behind closed doors. To me, it's like, just that's none of my business. It really isn't. It's not my business, because then it becomes, we want to colonize your mind and we want to colonize your
You are
house.
right, but at the same time, you were asking questions about French classes, francisation, les cours de francisation, and for a number of years we financed,
Yeah. Yeah. We weren't
Founded.
financing them enough. Yeah. Yeah.
and it was a real mess. Like it's getting better now, but if it was so important for immigrants to, we should have invested what was needed to make sure that every person wanting to learn French would have access to
Yeah.
a class. I'm really ashamed of that thing, because all the governments, like liberal and PQ governments, they cut the budgets on francisation. And I don't care if you speak Cantonese or Spanish at home. I don't care. But of course, if you receive immigrants that don't speak French at all, you will need more resources
Oh, yeah.
to make them learn French. So I think that approach right now, the CAC's governments, they want to increase the proportion of immigrants that already speak French, or Spanish, Italian, and languages
But hasn't
that
that
are a
already
little
been increasing, the percentage of immigrants who can speak French when they arrive?
during the pandemic.
Yeah.
So it was kind of aberrant.
Yeah,
data.
it wasn't. It
okay?
wasn't statistically normal. It's an anomaly that it would.
That was an
okay.
anomaly, and it's really, really hard to go get francophones and around the world, and the rest of Canada.
Yeah.
The federal government is trying to get French speakers immigrants.
Yeah.
So it's not that easy.
You're
it's not
competing
magic.
with the rest of Canada as
If
well.
you
Yes.
want, if you want to get immigrate here and become a citizen fast, and you're not in Quebec, if you learn how to speak French, you are almost guaranteed citizenship.
Of course.
Yeah.
I have friends on the West Coast who are just like, I'll just learn French.
There's
and they
your life
learned
hack.
French and they just got it.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's
Genius.
That's a resource that we really, really want and really, really
there's
need.
just a huge amount of spots open for anyone who speaks French.
And it doesn't mean that we won't receive and welcome other languages, but of course it's hard if you have 100% of immigrants speaking Cantonese. It's really, really hard for people speaking Cantonese to learn French.
Yeah.
If you receive people from Colombia or Mexico, it's a lot easier for them to learn French. Of course.
Yeah.
But that's
So-
a trend that's happening anyways, right? We're seeing more Central Americans immigrate here. We're seeing more,
Well,
or at least I think in the next 20, 30 years we will.
if
Like,
you
that's-
look at the
You think
Asylum seekers, yeah.
seekers right now, they are from India. Most of them
Oh,
are
shit.
from India, and
English, it would be the, yeah.
But
English is the second
almost
language.
everyone speaks English in
Yeah.
India,
Exactly.
just because they have so many dialects that often to speak
Yeah.
to the other group, into another group that has a different dialect,
Mhm.
they'll just choose English.
You're almost, sorry, your time here is almost up. I'm so sorry. Can we switch gears real quick and like go a little more personal? And I wanted to, we spoke about this earlier, but you're a woman in politics, and that is just, from what I understand, it's tough. Women in journalism is tough. Women in a lot of professions is tough. But where you have men and all this power, you have so much potential for abuse. And I just wanted to ask you, like, what would you tell a young woman going into politics today, based on what you saw when you were in there?
I think that things are evolving really, really fast right now. When I was a young woman starting off, it was like 14, no, how many years ago?
Like 12 years ago?
12 years ago. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
you're old.
I'm old.
We're all
and
old now.
C'est pas vrai.
I'm
Arrête.
in denial.
C'est pas vrai.
Que je
It's
suis
5
vieille.
years ago. It's 5
C'est pas
years.
vrai.
No.
Things were really different, but they were already really different from another 10 years earlier, you know. Power, men in power, young women among the staff, it always brings some situations, you know.
Yeah.
And I was telling you earlier that we are in little bubbles. I think it was during the sound test, so maybe
Je pense
you
que
should
oui.
cost
Yeah.
that part. Okay, so I'll start again. When you are at the National Assembly, or probably it's the same in Ottawa, you are in a little bubble. You spend all your time with your colleagues, with the MPs, with the ministers, and it's like you are in, you know.
It's a closed off world.
Yeah, and in French we say cocotte minute. It's kind of a
You're in like a little cocoon.
yeah, like a crock pot. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Like a pressure cooker.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like you are in a pressure cooker, and it sometimes you will have really awkward situations. I've had like really, really awkward situations and unacceptable situations. And when I think about it, I'm a little, not ashamed, but I'm a
You
little
regret.
disappointed. Yeah, I regret not being able to really speak out when it happened. You know, like hand on the thighs and like touching you in the back and
Yeah.
little kisses a little too close from your mouth and stuff like that. And
Alcohol is involved often.
of course, we in National Assembly in the offices you will find alcohol bottles at the whip office. There is a bar with wine, and after work you will have like happy hour, and
Yeah.
so you involve
Sec à
alcohol,
Power dynamics.
so sometimes, you know, stuff happens. I am encouraged by the fact that I see things really changing really, really fast. In National Assembly, there is a policy right now. You can complain and they will take measures.
Yeah.
It's not always working perfectly because it's really, really hard to, you know, say that your boss is...
Yeah. Because they
are
control
elected.
so much of your opportunities down the road.
yes, and you won't always be believed. Like the things that happened to me,
Yeah.
they were liberal MPs, okay? So I'm in the PQ, they are liberals. If I speak up, if I say, that person is
Well,
really
she's a
inappropriate,
PQ.
Yeah.
will I be believed? Or
Yeah.
am I trying to,
Yeah.
destroy that political
Which is an extremely fucked
opponent.
up way of looking at it, by the way. Like
yeah.
this idea that a woman would survive, would create a situation where like you're manufacturing an abuse claim, and it's like, do you have any idea
It's
how
like
hard
less
it is
than 1%
to make that claim? Oh, it's
Yeah.
like any other crime, right?
Yeah,
like
it's less
there
than
are
what-
people
people
who
don't make that
falsely
shit up,
report
basically.
crimes, but it's extremely low. And when you there's a couple things I wanted to say. First of all, like, I feel bad that you just said that you regret not, or you're ashamed. Like, dude, you have nothing to be ashamed of.
I agree. I
That
actually wanted to say that too.
That shit is someone else doing something
That's
to
not
you,
on
putting
you.
you in an impossible situation.
Yeah.
And like, and whether they're liberal or PQ or CAC or whatever, like, that shit has no place in politics. And I'm like, you don't deserve to have that happen to you, and nobody does. And so like, I hope you know that
Yeah.
you did the best you could with what you had and what you knew and what you
Agreed.
could
Yeah.
expect.
Yeah.
Right.
But I always want to thank those women who are, I don't want to say brave enough, because I know other
Everyone's
women
brave
like me
enough.
that are
Yeah.
not comfortable like
If you
speaking
survived it, you're brave.
up. Yeah.
I think so.
And I think talking about those issues is so important, and I just witnessed the culture, the behaviors in National Assembly really changing in the last few years, and I think it will continue, and the more and more we'll have women in power positions, I think it will help too, because 10 years ago, women in politics, it was still a little, special. Ooh,
Yeah,
a
like
woman.
a novelty.
Yeah,
The first
novelty.
woman premier. And we
Yeah.
we need to get to the point where
But 20 years of parity.
Yeah.
Is that a thing?
parodies. Yeah, that's the
and
word.
I think it really has a strong effect on how women are able to work in the political sector without being harassed, without having those little comments. I was pregnant in
Oh my
National
God.
Assembly, and I'm not talking about sexual harassment, but just
People touching your
comments.
body.
people touching your belly.
It's the
People-
code,
Like that.
the micro stuff,
Yeah.
microaggressions.
Because
Yeah.
right now you will see more pregnant women like MPs like Marois Risky and Émilie Sterien-Lessard, who were pregnant. They were MPs, so it was really, I think, really important to Geneviève Guilbeault too.
Yeah.
But when I was pregnant, you would see one pregnant woman like every
In the
5
yeah.
years in the building. So everybody had a comment like, "Oh, this is the pregnant lady," and I'm like, "I'm not just a
Yeah.
pregnant lady. Like I'm
I'm not a breeder.
a strategist.
Yeah.
I'm a brilliant advisor. I didn't want people just to see that I was
To reduce you to your biological functions. Yeah.
But that's what
There's the thing that carries life. Wonderful. Amazing. The
Yep.
vessel.
y'all see in the States, right?
Yeah. Jesus.
On pourrait faire notre conclusion en français.
Ben oui.
Comme tu veux, ouais.
Donc, merci de m'avoir reçu. Vraiment contente. On n'est pas toujours d'accord, effectivement. Avec Chris, on a souvent échangé et on est rarement d'accord sur les questions politiques. Mais au niveau humain, je suis d'accord avec toi
Oui.
que
Ouais.
à la fin de la journée, c'est ça qui compte le plus.
Oui. Puis
Voilà.
je pense que d'être capable d'être en désaccord avec quelqu'un, mais de quand même essayer de trouver des solutions, puis de garder les lignes de communication ouvertes, puis de pas fermer la page, ou pas fermer la porte, ça crée toujours la possibilité qu'on va te convertir en jeune woke.
Oh!
Ouais,
Ou
ça
que
va.
tu vas voter oui au prochain référendum. Hein?
Écoute,
On peut garder
nous
l'espoir.
sommes
Moi, un
ouverts.
deal que...
On a parlé avant que tu étais ici. On est ouvert à ça.
On est ouvert, on
C'est
est
juste
ouvert.
qu'on veut si on forme une nation, c'est comme vraiment qu'on forme quelque chose qui accepte les immigrants, qui accepte les gens qui sont des autochtones. C'est comme, mais je ne suis pas fermé
Non.
Québec comme une nation, tu vois.
Music to my ears.
There you go.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. It's I prefer times when I disagree with people. I don't know about Chris. I think Chris likes harmony.
I live in discomfort constantly.
Yeah,
Whether it's a little discomfort or a lot is fine.
I love disagreeing with people. It's like one of my favorite things. And so thank you so much for coming on. Please, if you enjoyed this, like down below on YouTube. Go on podcasts apps and give us a 5-star review, please. If you want to support us financially or not, the rover.ca/support-us. You can sign up for the free newsletter. You can sign up for the paid newsletter. If you want to throw money Chris's way, that's how Chris pays for his daughter to eat. So if you want to prevent Chris's family from starving, they are imminently starving. They are imminently starving. So please go to the rover.ca/support-us to prevent Chris's only child from dying this week.
All right.
Goodbye.
Before the goodbye, check out Antonine's stuff. We're gonna have
links below.
Links below. Check out Antonine. She's going to appear on Les Débatteurs. She has her podcast Duo. She's on RDI. She's on sometimes LCN or no? Is that like no?
No.
Not anymore. Screw those guys. Anyways,
And if you want
check her out.
check out my cat.
The cat's right there too.
My
Why
cat.
not?
You can't
Do you
find
have
him on
a
social
Insta
media.
feed for the cat?
No, but
All
I
right.
should. Anyways,
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.